Greetings, this is Jim Lindsay. This is a tutorial for Chapter 4, specifically over output. You'll see from the Blackboard screen that we're looking at Chapter 4 material, and as you look at this page, there are many links on this page. We're interested with these bottom three items right here. You're watching this movie right there. Here are the slides that I'll show you, and there's not many. This is a pretty short movie. But if you want the slides, there is a PPTX file that you can download and use. Here's a link I want you to please have at the ready. Basically, this 3D printer story. If you open it, it looks like this. It's from a program called 16:9, which is basically an aspect ratio. That's one of the things we'll be talking about with monitors. But this 16:9 program did some coverage of 3D printing, which is really cool stuff. And so there's a link to that story, but please have that ready. At a certain point, I'll ask you to watch that movie and then maybe be able to answer some questions about it. So let's get to our presentation. Okay, this part of the Chapter 4 lesson is specifically over output, and this part of it in particular is really like vocabulary heavy. This book overall does it exposes you to a whole lot of different new terms, and that's very evident within this particular part of the book. It's talking about terms that you've probably not thought of before, like monochrome versus color versus CRT versus flat panel, all these sorts of terms, and it can be overwhelming. What I really want you to take away from this is basically an appreciation for like monitors and printers. I want you to be able to read an advertisement for one of those devices. If you got you got an email from Best Buy, or you got an email from Walmart, and has like a bunch of advertisements for like different devices on sale, I want you to be able to read that advertisement, understand what it's saying, and be able to make an informed choice about which one of those devices you might want to buy. And so that's the purpose of this. Most of this is really very self-explanatory. When you read the book, it talks about what these different things are. Obviously, when we're talking about display devices, like your monitors or your screens for your computers, it can categorize those things as having being a color display like the one I'm using, or something. If you're using in some sort of a manufacturing environment in particular, you're probably that's where you might be exposed to something like a monochrome monitor. That's pretty old school. That's where there's just basically like one color, and either what shows up on the screen is either going to be green or orange or white. But for any of your modern kind of stuff, you're basically going to have like color displays. CRT those are the old school, real big, clunky, chunky kind of monitors that you used to use when you were a little kid in computer lab or something like that. Your flat panels displays, that's what everybody's using now, and it goes into a lot of detail about flat panel displays, like the different types of those, and then the characteristics of each one of those different types. And so if you're still using a CRT, at some point that thing's going to burn up before long, and you'll want to get rid of it, and then you'll have to find some sort of waste disposal program within your community which allows you to get rid of that kind of stuff, because there's with all of this computer equipment, you have chemicals and things in there that are bad for the environment. So if you just took your CRT monitor and went out and threw it in a sinkhole, there's like mercury and all kinds of stuff like that can like bleed out of that thing and get into the drinking water and hurt stuff. And so that's going to flat panel. It's not always super easy, because then you have to get rid of this thing. You have to figure out a way to get rid of that affordably. Size of the monitor, that's you can read about the size and aspect ratio and all these things, but these are terms that are described in the book, and I want you to be aware of what they are. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the here is a list of those different types of flat panel displays. Personally, I'd be happy when you come away from this class, if you can just look at LCD, LED, OLED, if you can like recognize that those are different, then that's cool. I'm happy with that. Knowing the exact specific differences and intricacies between each one of those, I'm not concerned with that. I mean, whatever. I want you to know that these are all different forms of flat panel displays, and that if you get into a position where you're going to be making a purchase, then you might want to, for like a real high-end purchase. Let's say you're like, you think of the front wall when you go into Grice Hall and you've got like all these big panels of news and different business programs that are displaying on the wall over there. At that point, going, hey, I'm spending about $10,000, $20,000 worth of money here. Let me get into the details here and figure out what, LED and OLED and iMod and all these others. What's going to last the longest for me for this kind of program? What's going to work the best? At that point, dig into those details. But for right now, if you can just recognize that those are different forms of flat panel, I think I'd be okay with that. It talks about your projectors, and you guys are certainly going to be using projectors at work. Right here, here's a little picture of a Pico projector, basically coming off of a device the size of a phone. As you guys get into your business jobs and your business majors, you're taking a business class, or if you're going into education, you see a teacher right here. Basically, there's a projector up on the ceiling, and we use these in just about every classroom you go into at Western now has at least a projector and some sort of computing device that allows you to put information out through that projector. And you guys will use this stuff. And so read about the information you have in your text. I think the main thing I'd want you guys to really take away from this is that if you're using like a Windows computer, if it's not a new Windows computer, you're probably going to have some sort of 15-pin adapter on there, basically like what looks like an old monitor connector. And at the back of the projector, there's either a 15-pin port where you'd plug in a cable that connects to that, or there might be like an HDMI port or something, some other video port on the back of that, and then you'd have to get an adapter which would allow your 15-pin to connect to it. If you're using an Apple device, you don't have that 15-pin. You've got HDMI in your Apple devices as well as some other connectors. And I have an iMac that's from 2008, so I don't have one to look at to tell you exactly what that Apple connection looks like. But I know they have HDMI, and so you will use projectors, and you want to figure out if you're using an iPad. There's like a connector you can get for the iPad to connect to these sorts of deals. But you guys will use this at work. Okay. The next one I want to talk to you about is basically the big one I want to talk to you about is printers. Everybody needs a printer. You may not print a lot of stuff, but for just about every industry you go into, at some point you have to put documents out there in some sort of format. They could be just travel vouchers for people, people filling out that went on a trip so they can get their money for their trip. It could be checks that you're printing. It could be contracts that you're printing. But just about everybody has a need for printers of some sort. These terms right here, impact versus non-impact. Just about everything in use right now is non-impact. For the uses that you guys are going to have. If you're working at some place like the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, where where you go down and get like your license and license plates and stuff like that, and you have that printer in the back that looks like this thing. It's going zzz, 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 zzz. I mean, that's a dot matrix printer. If you go into manufacturing, that's another instance where in manufacturing where you'd see this older technology, but it's got this tractor feed kind of paper, which basically it sets in a box down here and it feeds up and out. Sometimes at rental car places they'll still have these kind of printers, but just about everybody else is going to have a non-impact printer, which is going to be inkjet or laser, and then like all these sorts of things right here, like how do you measure how fast it prints, what are the consumables of it, do you have toner or do you have ink, those sorts of things. What's really great about printers, the newer printers, is they're most everything that you get nowadays is basically a wireless device, and so you can all you have to do is just plug it in, and it has its own built-in Wi-Fi antenna. And like at our house, I have a printer downstairs that's right next to the router, and it doesn't have to be there because it's wireless, but everybody in the house can print to that one printer, and you don't have to connect any wires for any of it. It's just really very convenient. That's been one of the really great innovations that's come around in the last several years. This ability to get that thing networked in wirelessly. You've been able to network printers forever, but having that wireless network capability built in even to these cheap, less than $100 printers is really nice. Now, the special kind of printer I want to bring to your attention is basically this 3D printer right here, and you see it over here in this picture right here. This Cubex Duo right here. There's a basketball in this printer, and basically the printer made a basketball. And you're like, what? What is that all about? Well, that's where I want you to watch this movie, and let me jump over to Blackboard and point that out to you again. I'm in Blackboard, this 3D printer story. If you watch this is about a 13-minute video, but watch it to its end. It's super cool stuff, and we're trying to buy. We're in the requisition process. We're trying to buy a couple of 3D printers for our department so we can do this stuff in classes and show you guys, like basically at the start of class, start at printing something, and by the end of class having like a basketball or having something that we can say, hey, look what we made. In a second, and 30 minutes ago, 45 minutes ago, there was nothing there. And it actually creates the device right there for you. It's almost like Star Trek. So please watch that video, and I'll see you in about 14 minutes. Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope after you've watched it, after you've read what's in the book, you'd be able to answer questions like these. How does that printer work? How might it be implemented in a number of different industries right here? And then this question right here, basically, what sort of legislation was Congress prompted to pass back in December 2013? And that's answered by when you watch the end of that video, it talks about stuff that brings that up. So here's your critical thinking questions based on that material you just read and watched. Okay, and to finish, this is the conclusion of the output lesson and the conclusion of chapter 4. You can have audio output, which you're well aware of. You're listening to audio output right now, but you can output sounds through speakers and headphones and earbuds and those sorts of things, and that's something that we take advantage of on a regular basis. And so I hope you've enjoyed this chapter. Again, I really like this chapter, and I think the neat, cool stuff that you can do with input and output. And initially, you don't necessarily think, well, that's you think it's going to be boring, but once you get into it, you find it's pretty cool. So thank you, and thank you for your time and attention, and have a good day.